Hello, my name's Ian Stroud.
And my name is David Malone. And this is Hyperland.
Good day to you, sir. How are you this fine day?
Slightly chilly, but otherwise just fine, mate.
I've got a question for you, actually. There was something about Musk, Elon Musk buying, or did he get a license or something? It's to do with the podcast that we did about the out of this world banks.
Yes, yeah. There was a couple of things, actually.
Yeah, okay.
It was reported, I think it was Reuters, said that Elon Musk, or X, formerly known as Twitter, had been granted a money transmitter license from Utah.
Yes. I thought you were going to tell me that Reuters had said David Malone is not a crackpot coming up with these ideas.
Well, they're just little bits. I mean, Elon Musk has been applying for licenses to be a money transmitter, which basically means that he can get offer to handle people's payments and allow users of X to move money, transfer money between them. Yeah. Making it a bit like PayPal sort of thing.
Okay.
And I think the license from Utah is sort of like the 13th, 14th, 15th state. So he's applying state by state. So it shows that he's got a plan and he wants to do this.
So all the signs are pointing towards what you were talking about in the podcast about.
Well, certainly he is looking to make X into, I think at some point he said it was a bit like WeChat. On WeChat, I think this is the Chinese equivalent.
Yeah.
You have something like that. And I think people refer to it, not that I'm on any of these things, I hasten to add, an everything app. In other words, X would cease to be just what it had been, Twitter, and become something which you can do everything on. And of course, that's what Zuckerberg wanted to do with Facebook. They're all looking at this. Can you make your platform into everything, where you can do your online shopping, you can move money around, you can chat to your friends, the whole thing. But the
thing with the Chinese one, did you not? I think you used to have to go to like an ATM, a cash point machine, and you'd put cash on it or you'd top it up.
I don't know about that, mate.
I thought it was.
Could well be. I mean, with someone like PayPal, you just link a bank account to your PayPal account. There's obviously security between the two. And I think I'm right in thinking that of all of the non-banking financial apps, I think PayPal has never been hacked.
Right.
Someone will probably correct me about that, but I mean it's pretty secure.
Yeah.
So it's a business model that works. And then there was this other thing that came up where it was being reported. I think it was Forbes said Elon Musk's plan to replace banks and PayPal, and there was a lot of writing amongst enthusiasts of cryptocurrencies suddenly saying, "Ooh, well, if this happens, this will lead to another speculative boom in Bitcoin and blockchain. The rest of But I think it is interesting that the signs are that he's definitely thinking of doing this, and of course, that is tied up to his satellite system. Mm-hmm. Just one other thing I wanted to add on, because in the weeks since we did that, we recorded the original one about the banks, and then these few bits and pieces were in the press. I was thinking more about it, and of course, I don't know why I didn't say it at the time, except that I hadn't thought of it, but it's obvious now that the weird link that I was making between making a bank, or it might be a bank or it might be a non-bank financial institution.
Yes, I think you refer to it as a non-banking institution.
Well, and I mean, and it's weird because in some ways it would be a bank.
Yeah.
And he could incorporate it as a bank.
Yeah.
But if you could offer what he wanted to offer without it actually being a bank, if you could say it's a non-banking financial institution, then
you get around regulations and
it
things.
falls outside of all of the regulations that have
Yeah.
been put in place. And I'm not suggesting that's a good thing. I'm imagining that I'm Elon Musk or someone like him thinking, what would I want to do?
Yeah.
So I think it's not a given that he'd say that it would be incorporated as an actual bank. It could be, but it could be non-bank as well. And then the other thing I was thinking is this connection between a bank and the asteroid mining. There's a good synergy between the two projects. And, in the first one, I was saying it is a bit weird when the whole business of asteroid mining seems science fiction to some people, but to link asteroid mining and banking also seems odd. But what I was saying in the first one is that if you put up a bank, then the bank can issue bonds. And if those bonds are based on we're going to have this enormously valuable asset.
Yeah.
And as we said at the time, the fact that it would take a while, even a couple of decades.
That's right. I talked about my brother, and he was looking at a company in Australia, and I can't remember the exact. I mean, it was over 5 years from, I think, you being able to invest in it before they even started building the mine.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a huge timescales in these things.
Yes, exactly. So the fact that it would take a long time, the asteroid mining would have a long timeline, doesn't really make it that unusual. Plus the fact that lots of banks issue bonds that have 50 years plus before their maturity.
Can I ask, just jump in there?
Yeah.
Rather, I mean, I was thinking about, again, after we recorded it, I sort of thought, I mean, is it just a case of, could Elon Musk just set up a company and people buy shares and invest in it in that way? Is that what would be the difference between that and your bonds?
Well, there are lots of differences.
We're talking about regulating.
If you issue shares, then those shareholders have a legal voice in the running of things.
Yeah, and
it becomes, the value of it will float on the stock market.
Yeah,
and so he loses control, and my vision of him is he likes to be in control. He also, rightly or wrongly, thinks he's probably cleverer than most other people, so he's going to think, I'll be in control of this, thank you very much. People are more likely to back a big project like that via bonds than shares, because in a liquidation, if something goes bankrupt, bondholders get far superior in terms of where they stand in the queue of people trying to get their assets back. Bondholders come quite near the front, whereas people who bought stocks and shares are right at the back. So no one's going to say, oh, I'll invest 100 million in stocks and shares. Why wouldn't they just invest 100 million as a bondholder? And then if something goes wrong, you're right at the front of the queue for getting your assets back. But the thing I was going to add is the other really interesting tie-up between the two is if he creates this bank, and if, as I think he will at least consider, as I said, incorporating it in space, and if he does that, make it essentially another sovereign, like a nation, but without an actual physical country. Meaning that his relationship to other, he would be as an equal with other nations rather than a company within a nation. So it makes it a very different prospect. He doesn't have to do that, but I can see major advantages. But the other thing is this: by connecting it to the asteroid, you would be then, despite the fact that your bank's currency is essentially a cryptocurrency, probably, or even if it's not a cryptocurrency, which I think it could well be, it's still electronic, and therefore would appear to be what they call a fiat currency, like all the other currencies. In other words, that you can just make you can print as many of them as you want, and their value is not tied to anything. There's no gold standard anymore. So all currencies are just based on what someone will pay for it, and their value relative to other currencies fluctuates on an exchange rate.
I think they say, let it be done, or it shall be. Is that the Latin of
I don't know. I don't know. You know more about that than I do.
No, it's one of those weird things. You sort of, when you first mentioned it a while back, I was thinking, what, is the car company getting into?
No.
That's where I was going with it. But no, yeah, you're right. So a fiat monetary system is one that is made up by the government.
Yeah. And since the financial crisis, everyone's become increasingly worried about this because it's been clear to people how unstable fiat currencies are. So for all the gold bugs, the people who love gold are saying, this is why you shouldn't have your assets in these fiat currencies, because they can be worth, $1 million one day and 4p the next.
Yeah.
And they would advocate sticking with gold because, well, there it is. It's solid and it's not just zeros and ones. And
also, the other thing is you just can't keep printing and printing and printing it.
Well, exactly. A fiat currency, you want another trillion, fine, we'll just switch the printer on again.
I wish I had one at home.
Well, exactly. We'd all like one of those printers. But his new currency would appear to be one of those.
Yeah.
But if he's tied it to issuing bonds and tying it closely to an enterprise that says we're going to mine an asteroid. They don't have to be the same business, but the bank has to be issuing bonds, and somewhere in the prospectus you're mentioning this mining enterprise.
Yeah.
Then interestingly, your currency, or Elon Musk's new currency in his new bank, would actually, in a world of fiat currencies, not be a fiat currency. His would be backed by precious metal, namely a whacking great big asteroid.
So it's a physical commodity.
Yeah. So isn't that? It's just a weird tie-up.
It's kind of like, it's taken us back to what, the 1930s? Was it around that time that the sort of fiat currencies started coming in, or there was certainly legislation? Fiat currencies
came in really when Nixon, I think it was, dumped the gold standard unilaterally without even telling anyone in the was it 73, something like that?
Right.
It was all tied up with the oil shock.
Yeah.
And that's really when, that was the end of the gold standard. But I just think it's very interesting that if you tie these two things together, the bank and the mining industry, and you tie them together via the bonds, and why would you invest in the bonds? Well, apart from the fact that if you got people like Musk and Bezos to put their big chunk of cash in, and if I'm right and it's a zero tax environment, then the other thing that will happen is that places like Luxembourg and Ireland could be in major trouble, because why should Apple leave its money in Ireland when it can put it in Musk's off-world bank at 0% tax? So I think it could have major complications for those low-tax havens. They might find themselves suddenly yesterday's news.
Eek.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly for somewhere like Ireland, because I read a headline not so long ago saying Ireland's one of the wealthiest places, the highest wealth per capita, and it's just a function of the way they calculate it. In 1 year, I think their GDP went up something like 14%.
Yeah,
that's just impossible. But it had nothing to do with the real economy. It was just that financial institutions dumped when corporations dumped their cash holdings there. So countries like Ireland, if Elon Musk did do what I'm suggesting, I think there'd be massive, catastrophic fallout for countries like Ireland. And as I say, I find it really interesting that he could advertise it as a currency that isn't fiat, that is backed by metal, which just makes it that much more attractive, because your bonds are saying, yeah, we'll pay you the coupon. And yes, if we have all of these major corporations and wealthy individuals who are going to park the money in the bank, and then the bank can do what banks do and make some investments, it would be successful just on those terms. But if you're also saying, and you can trust these 50-year duration bonds, because at some point during that 50 years, our asteroid and the technology to mine it, smelt it, separate out the minerals will all be real and will be here, then it's a metal-backed currency in a world of fiat currencies. It makes it even more attractive.
It's
so
weird.
It's just, I just thought it was worth mentioning that extra thing, which just occurred to me after we'd finished talking.
Yeah, no, but it's weird because I think after we did the first one, it was you were sort of reflecting on the fact that these people are looking forward, and why don't we?
Yeah.
And then you sort of look forward and you go, well, any of the trillionaires to become, any of them having so much power and leverage over our governments is a bad thing. But a few weeks ago, a businessman in Scotland, Tom Farmer, I think he was saying their tax system in Scotland's different. I think they've got 6 layers of tax, and he had been complaining. But I'm sure at the time he said, yeah, look what they're doing in Ireland. I just thought, really?
Yeah.
It's a big wake-up call, not just for kind of this might happen, but actually what are the governments doing to plan against something like this? Or for
well, I don't know
like
that
this?
any of the banks have, any of the governments have thought about it. I mean, I say that sitting here in my, my study in Scarborough.
In your smoking jacket.
As if I know. But I mean, I did, when we were making the AI film, I did talk to the fellow who was sort of the point person for British politics to advise and protect Britain about AI.
Yeah.
He was introduced, he was put up as kind of, this is the government's man. Nice enough, but really, without wishing to be...
I know where you're going. Did you remember a character in a comedy? Was he called Nice but Dim?
That's a little bit...
Oh, is that
too rude? But essentially, in comparison with what I heard in the interviews from the AI people, this fella had no idea. And I just remember thinking at the time, you're a nice man, and you're a man with, a cap gun.
Yes. Facing
an army who've got fully automatic rifles. You're just completely out of your depth. And I think the same is true. I mean, it's obviously true when it comes to international finance, that the regulators are just a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
They seem, I mean, I'm sure there are a couple of good regulators, but most of the ones I became aware of during all of those years, they fell into 2 camps. The well-meaning but utterly outclassed, and the corrupt.
Yeah.
And I really didn't meet anybody else.
Well, it was the same when Sunak sort of called that all the AI experts, and it was kind of like, oh, Britain. I mean, I don't want to trash where we are. We are quite progressive in AI technologies, but we're nowhere near leading it. I mean, China and the States are streets ahead.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, like DeepMind was created in London, or at least in the UK, not in America.
Yeah, okay.
So, there are some very clever people. I've met a few of them. But it's in terms of how this stuff is going to get used. And when it comes to the world of finance and banking and cryptocurrencies, I don't think our regulators are anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think they're not regulating anything. So I think, I'm not sure that countries are thinking ahead, but it's worth just as a last thing, it's worth remembering that people like Musk, I think Bezos, I can't remember now, but there's a thing called long-termism.
Yeah.
One of those ridiculous isms, but basically it's this sort of ideology that you should think ahead and you should think in the long term, and if you really want to be successful, you've got to have a very long-term vision, and that long-term vision gives you a very different view about what are the existential crises we faced and what should we do about them.
Yeah.
And those two and a couple of others who I had more dealings with, they all sort of adhere to this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem unlikely to me that they would think in these terms which fall outside of what people normally think of. I mean, you could think, well, maybe I should invest in a bank. Or you could think, maybe I'll just invent a new one and I'll site it on a satellite. And I mean, why not?
Yeah.
What's to stop them? What's to stop them?
Oh, there's nothing to stop them.
Why should they just adhere to the norms that we're used to? That's not how people like them have made their money. They haven't done it by just sort of going along with what people have done before. They've all thought in terms of, oh, we'll do something new. So I don't see why they wouldn't in this case. And all the signs are there. That's what got me interested in it, is all of the signs about currencies that are no longer controlled by nation states. Well, that's what cryptocurrencies are.
Yeah.
There are financial institutions which fall outside of virtually all the regulations that have been put in place nationally or even internationally. That's what non-banking is about. The growth in that sector is completely, utterly out of control.
Yeah.
Regulators have no tools with which to get it back under control. That's clear. I just read the Irish financial regulators' position paper on the non-banking financial sector, and the short version of it, it's about 40 pages long, but the short version is basically, help! That would be the executive summary.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where to go with this. It's I think.
No, I don't either, mate. I don't either. It's just, it's a weird lot of stuff all pointing in the same direction.
It is, and I mean, a lot of people. I mean, if you take Elon Musk, he splits opinion about him. So there's certainly a lot of people who think, that the sort of non-regulated blockchain crypto is the way forward, and we don't want the government's oversight. And I get that, but who used to run Microsoft? Gates. In terms of our society is set up in a way that Gates, Musk, all these people are. You think that in the end they deserve reward for their way of thinking and the work they put in it. It's not as if it's just landed in their lap. But at the same time, we're in a society where people can get obscenely rich. And then with Gates, he goes out and yes, he gives some of the money back. I mentioned it to you actually. Why is he given this opportunity of playing God instead of saying, well, I'm going to help these people over here? Why should it be him? And your point was, well, he's probably better than the government in terms of looking after people.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I don't like a situation where a very small number of people have powers equal to a medium-sized sovereign state.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No, I don't like that.
I think it's very dangerous, and I don't think it leads to a world. We're all worried by a political dictator.
Yeah.
Put the two words dictator and political together, and everyone automatically goes, ooh.
Yeah.
Financial dictator. They're just a rich person, right? Well, I don't think so. I think someone can be a dictator through political power, someone can be a dictator through financial power. And anyway, financial power rapidly translates into political power anyway.
Yeah.
So a small coterie of unelected financial dictators doesn't fill me with thinking, oh, it's going to be great.
No, I don't.
It's just they're here at a moment when so much of the machinery of
change, isn't it?
Of national and supranational governments has become so corrupt and arthritic that, you say, it would be tempting for people to say, well, at least he gets things done and he's not so corrupt as Washington, D.C. No, he's not as corrupt in the same way that Washington, D.C. is. but probably has as narrow a vision of, well, let's have me on top and everyone else come a distant second.
Yeah.
So I don't like that either. I'm not advocating this. I just think I see all these things happening and they all seem to point in the one direction, and you put them together in a way which the bank, the asteroid mining, the bonds, the metal-backed currency, it all fits together in a way that it becomes financially viable almost from day one. In other words, you get past well, how would that ever get off the ground financially? I think, unless I've just missed something completely, what I've sketched out answers that question.
Yeah.
And not only is it financially viable from day one, but be attractive to investors from day one. So it could happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is what's going on. I never have any inside information. But if I were Musk, I would be looking at it. And Elon, if you're listening, mate, I can tell you how to do it. Give us a ring, mate. I've got it worked out, and I can show you how to do this.
Can I ask another question? Just to
Sure.
keep you on for another two minutes. Why is nobody else talking about this?
Well, I mean, there's only two answers to that. Answer one, the most likely, I've missed something critical, and this is a whole load of hogwash.
Yeah.
The other one is that Elon Musk and a small number of people are thinking about it, but why would they make a fuss about it? Why would they let anybody else know?
But you're not a full-time journalist at the New York Times or at the Financial Times or Bloomberg or...
Yeah. I don't think they have thought of it. If they had, surely you're right, they would have written about it. So either they've thought about it and realized that it's not true and are just, I haven't caught up with them. But also the news cycle, what we're talking about is still hypothetical. And the news cycle doesn't really, I learned about this in the BBC, the news cycle really doesn't deal with hypotheticals.
No, you've got to prove it and doubly prove it.
They wait until it's happening and then they talk about it.
No, they wait until it's happened.
Yeah, so, a scoop is to tell someone about something that has happened as soon after it has happened as is humanly possible. But to talk about it before it's happened, that's not what news is. And unfortunately, the news mentality has triumphed over everything else. Because there was a time when other things in the media did look ahead, but that's just fallen out of fashion, and I don't know why.
Shame. All right, well, on that note, falling out of fashion.
I'll let you know if Elon gets in contact.
All right. And in the meantime, if you're listening and have enjoyed this, subscribe or like the podcast.
Yeah, and if you want to leave a comment on Substack, that would be great.
Cheers for now, David. Thanks.
Yeah, mate.